to the Matt Lucas Big Three. You are about to watch Shereel Washington. If you know her, you're giving a round of applause right now. If there's a person that exudes light in this world, it's Shereel. She's an herbalist, great martial artist, dance. She teaches Pan-African, she'll tell you. And so let's get started. Again, share this with your friends, like, follow, subscribe, do all those things. I've learned it really helps me out. Go on to Total BS Wellness, take some courses. But let's get started because I had a great time with this conversation. Am I there now?
Awesome sauce. Yeah, I got you.
Oh, did you say awesome?
Awesome sauce.
Hold on.
All right. How are we looking? Are we looking good? All
You
right?
look great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hold on, let me get my tea. It's right over here.
That's the beer of America.
In honor of my white trash upbringing, like they're like, well, if there's anything you would love, Matt, is to drink your green tea out of a Coors mug made in the
So, I grew up around Coors, Bud Light, Schlitz.
Oh,
malt.
Schlitz. It's Miller time. Yeah.
Miller Lite, Schlitz, malt liquor, and Old English, of course. I've had my strong Southern family, and there's the cheap malt liquor.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so I had to stop letting my phrase "don't say beer, say bull" kind of fly. Yeah, I had to stop saying stupid things like that because no one knew what I was talking about ever.
Oh, I know they don't. I don't. It's like, what? And plus now I guess I have really grown my taste of beer. I definitely am a fan of German beer. So
Yeah. So you're all educated now?
I think I am.
Okay. So I needed to talk to you because I'm a huge fan of yours. What are your big three, like the three things that inspire you, that you could talk on, that you could practice, it's hard for you to get sick of and all that stuff? This is not a formal conversation. This is for no other reason than to just, I don't know, talk to people that inspire me. And I've learned a lot from this. And you learn, I think, more about a person by knowing what inspires them versus like what they're, doing. Like, you could be a programmer, but if you're really into music, that would probably come. If you're really into, it's probably coming out in the things you program and stuff like that. First, will you tell us your name?
Yes, my name is Shereel Washington.
I met you through what?
You met me through Master Sheldon, or Sheldon Callahan, my teacher of Shaolin Kung Fu and Qigong over at Shaolin Life of Deep Root Center for Spiritual Studies. So that's how we met. I've seen you come by the school a couple of times before, and then we had the party for him last year at Shandong, and that's when you and I really connected. Yeah. And then, of course, when you came on to Chief Fest and taught online, we really connected, and so I met you through Sheldon.
Yeah, and I got to do and I got the honor of doing I fell in love with you, just your energy, you're super strong, super positive. Then we got to talk in the garden, and then you just started like looking through all the plants, and you're like, oh, can I take this and make tinctures? And so you're an herbalist too, right?
Yes, I am. I'm an herbalist. And my herbal journey began with my grandmother.
Okay.
My grandmother was my first herbal teacher. And back in her days, having gardens and growing your things was so commonplace. Okay. And she was a master gardener. And so she turned her whole backyard into like this big old garden. And so when we would go to her house, we knew that we would not only get good food, but if we were sick, like she was the place where we knew we would get healed. And so she would always have me go out with her in her garden and pick stuff. And the thing that she grew a lot of was different types of mint. So it seemed to be a strong ally for her. And of course, collard greens was another food medicine that she would grow as well. So I would always be around her when she would make things like soups or teas or whatever she needed. So that herbal culture and upbringing was around me early in my life. And so I was always interested in herbal things and wanting to keep that around me, but then I decided to formally get some training and actually go to herbal school at the California School of Herbal Studies over in Sonoma County. And that was a wonderful experience. It's about a 2-year track, a wonderful program to be up there in Sonoma and to actually be at a school where they grew their own herbs. They grew, I think they have about 400 different varieties of herbs that they grow, and they sit on about 80 acres. And actually, the school was founded by Rosemary Gladstar years ago. She was one of the kind of the premier herbalists here in California, but then she moved away, and then someone else, Rebecca Maxfield, directs the school now. Mm-hmm. And it's just a beautiful campus. It's actually a human sanctuary where everything is compostable and recycled, and they have such a beautiful protocols around maintaining that at the school. And it was just a wonderful to be around the plants and to be around the herbs and just to be there.
If you were going to talk to someone about herbalism, like you cut some of my flowers off out here, mm-hmm. And I have some of that on video. I got to edit that stuff up. I've been going over here, and but you were like, yeah, it's really easy. You just take it and then you just put it in oil, and then mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, what is there like a basic way of making kind of extracts that it's like really easy for someone like me to do? Like I've done some of that, like a double boiler and put it in the oven, and or something like it like a low 200-degree oven or something like that. But yeah, what is there like a simple process if I wanted to do that?
Yeah, the simple way I like to always direct people is through tea. Tea is such a water extraction is such a common ritual and protocol that everybody knows, and so making water extractions are quite simple. You just, either whether it's fresh or dry, you go ahead and infuse your tea for, if you want a strong infusion, you definitely want it to steep a little bit longer. But that's the way that I like to get people to introduce herbs to people, is through water extraction and through tea, because most people on the planet, that's what they do. Now, when you start getting into things like extractions, like tinctures or glycerites or honeys, that takes more time, especially alcohol extractions. And I know, like, culturally speaking, depending on where you're from, certain types of alcohol is not always accessible to certain communities. And, so like for me, I love using spirits, things like vodka, gin, scotch. That's easy for people to get. But then when you want to get kind of high class and fancy, I'm going to get grain alcohol, that's expensive, and it's also an explosive. So you just you run the risk when you want to get high up like that. And so I tend to always want to start with what's most accessible to people. And I taught herbal class on how to make home sanitizer. And so one of the basic ingredients was just, okay, if you have vodka or gin, and everybody had that. So it was really great that everybody was able to go to their cupboard and use what they had, rather than be like, okay, you need to go and order you some grain alcohol, cane, corn, it's like most people don't have the money to afford alcohol content at that level. It's like 150 to maybe 99.16%. It's a high alcohol percentage, mm-hmm. And so that type of to get alcohol at that level, it costs more money. Yeah. And it's not easy to get. So I always like to start people off with what's available, what's around you. And of course, we know water is available to us. And if you're going to use alcohol as your extraction, and start with gin, vodka, scotch, bourbon, and I've made plenty of tinctures with those, and they turned out really well. The alcohol percentage is anywhere between 40 and 50%, and I think that works out just fine. This means that your herbs have to macerate a little bit longer, but it's okay. It still will pull the medicinal constituents from the plant that you need to make your strong medicine. So start with what you got.
And is there a thing that can kill it? So like, we're making teas, but if I was to make a tea out of something, because I remember I was into the raw food thing for a while, and they would always talk about anything over this certain temperature, that means it's no longer raw. But are there extractions that you could do with just like not quite hot water, but almost like a poaching, like 120-degree water, as opposed to going all the way up? Because you wouldn't extract them with boiling water, right? You would just kind of warm the water and then put the herbs in there.
No. I mean, most plants, they're pretty hardy. I mean, there are some plants that are pretty delicate, but mm-hmm. mostly when you do a tea extraction, you want to boil your water.
Okay.
And you shut your water off. Then you add your herbs and put your lid on it and let it sit. And so the cooling down process of the water will kind of, as the water is cooling down, it will not harm. Now, there's only one plant that I know that's like that, and that's cleavers. You can't do a tea extraction, a water extraction with cleavers.
Okay.
That's probably the only plant that is just it's too delicate. So what you do is you do like a agua fresca. You go ahead and put it in your purified or spring water and blend it and strain it. Then you can add alcohol to it to go ahead and keep it.
Oh, see, okay. So if I had I'm putting this out there. If I had one wish on this earth, it would be to get, in the three things, bring in Shereel Washington and have you teach us to make 3 awesome herbal tinctures. Maybe one for the home, one for the body, and then like one just to make us feel good.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would love that.
Yeah, I just made a cordial, for example, which is a wonderful heart-filled liqueur. They're fun to make. If you have any type of an overabundance of fruit, that would be where you would infuse your alcohol with your favorite fruit. The one that I made was with apples and peaches and raisins and cinnamon, and it was super. So those are really easy to make for you to enjoy. And then if you want to also make stuff for the body, you can use raw apple cider vinegar, to go ahead and infuse your. And I've been making a lot of acetums or aceta, meaning acetic acid from apples. And so I've been making a lot of those lately because it's really. Apple cider vinegar is really good for the skin, for the probiotic benefits. It's very tonifying. It's very astringent. It's very clean, and so that's a great one to use on the body as well. And then for yourself, you can also use apple cider vinegar as a tincture if you are sensitive to alcohol, or you can go ahead and infuse a honey, with your favorite herbs and take it internally and make a tea with it. So there are lots of different things we could do.
Okay, so this is my dream for 2021. We'll get you in here because so I'm doing a course tonight on making my favorite. So a good sleep aid is black sesame tea, and so I make a thing called night drink, and it's one of the coziest beverages ever. So you make a tea with black sesame, right? And then you, just boil up, let it sit for a little while, and then you put it in a Vitamix with the sesame, and you blend it, and it turns into like a sesame milk, right?
Ooh,
and it's super delicious. But and then you add then you add a little bit of nut butter. I just use peanuts because peanuts with black sesame taste really great. So peanuts and then a little bit of raw honey, and it's one of the frothiest, thickest, most soothing. And then when you're drinking it, I mean, I've had people over here and I'm like, no, it's a good sleep aid, and literally you can watch them while they're drinking it. They're just like they're just getting all sleepy, and I just call it night drink because I just love drinking it at night. But it is one of my all-time favorite drinks, and once this time of year comes around, I love black sesame too. So
it's a good taste. It's a good nutty taste, and I don't consume black sesame often, but when I have, I've always enjoyed it, and so I'm curious to try that.
Oh, it's the jam.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds.
So we got okay. I want to talk to you a lot about. So I mean, I'm more guiding. All right, first, what are your big 3?
What am I? Well, definitely herbalism is one of my big 3.
Okay.
Dance and also martial arts. Those have become my really big 3. I would say martial arts has now become on par with my dance since I started training with Master Sheldon. At first, it was a cultivated relationship. My husband, bless his heart, he was the one who inspired me to train, and I didn't think I would ever need it because it's like, why, for what, and it's funny because I come from a martial arts background. My father was a fierce fighter, and he was in law enforcement for many years, and so when we were kids, he would always try to teach us, and we were girls and stuff, and it'd be like, that's hard, Dad, that's hard, So eventually he just got impatient, and he was like, look, you're gonna need to learn how to defend yourself. So he no longer walks this earth. But I know that if he were still here, he would really be happy to see how martial arts has become a part of my life. So he will probably be at the school, probably be drilling Sheldon, doing all that stuff. But I really am. But again, it wasn't until I began studying with him where I began to just love it, only because of his own teaching approach. It's like he gets really deep, and it's like things that I've always wanted to know and understand about what does it mean to be a martial artist. Yeah. So that's one of my big three, on par with dance and herbalism. So those are the three things that
you got into martial. Okay, so and you're like the perfect vehicle, because you're hardcore, like, into martial arts, but you're when people talk about martial arts, they're now thinking about combat sports. Right. Mm-hmm. So they're just thinking, MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, stuff like that. And like, I'm actually working with some guys that are really into Muay Thai, and I'm kind of translating like the yoga and then like more combative fighting. Like, how do you do MMA in a line? Because now they're doing a lot of MMA fights, but it'd be like 5-on-5. So like it changes the way that you don't just ground and pound because someone can kick you and stuff. So that being said, you got into martial arts much later in life, right?
Yeah, much later. And I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing now. I mean, again, my thing was just dance, and I figured that was really my dream come true since I was 9 years old.
Right.
And so I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to do martial arts. It was around me like herbs, but my thing was just, I want to dance. And, watching Fame and watching Debbie Allen and the School of the I attended the School of the Arts in Sacramento, which is a small high school there that had an arts program. But watching that show was just like, oh my God, that was just something that I just
Leroy was the man.
So bad, hey, brother. Hey,
okay.
That was like...
We're gonna go music for a second.
Okay.
All right, so there was Johnny. He was the bad boy in Fame, and I remember having the record, and in my head all the time, it's Friday, and I swear to you, at least every 3 Fridays, his hit song from the Fame soundtrack, Friday night is gonna be all right. And that song runs through my head almost every Friday night because I had the Fame record. I was such a record geek. And so I remember, but Fame, I wanted to dance. So, and that's why my dad, I think, got me so hardcore into martial arts, was because he's like, this boy needs to learn how to fight. Like, just growing up in like, the South, and I was obsessed with Fame and wanted to dance. Yeah,
I know.
So it's like, you better learn to fight, kid. Yeah. Yeah,
and it's funny. My husband had said, look, I really want you to learn how to defend yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's really noble. I'm not going off track, but I think it's really noble for men, whether they're as a father or a husband or whatever role that a man plays in the life of a woman, to want that. I mean, that's not common, Right, and so the fact that he was like, look, I'm not going to always be around or be able to get to you. So he wanted to be assured that I could handle myself as best I can until help comes or something happens. And so it took a while for me to really take it serious. It had to really grow on me, because when I did it, I just did it just to make him happy. But then after a while, it's like, okay, I think I need to take this a little more serious. And then, but even that, it was like, okay, I'm gonna come, I'm gonna commit, but the heart piece. And then I guess the more I got into it, the more questions I have that weren't always being answered. And it's no fault to the teachers. It's just, I think they gave me the best of what they had at the time. And so as you grow and your teachers come to you, it's like, okay, now I'm in a place where I'm getting a lot of my questions answered, and I'm understanding what real Kung Fu is. And it's not being an ass kicker. It's so not that. I mean, you got Kung Fu in your marriage, in your relationships, your interpersonal experiences. That's serious Kung Fu right there.
Yeah.
That's real Kung Fu, but also understanding the mindset of, if you had to get into an altercation, where are you in your mind space? How far do you go in order to protect yourself and maybe other people and get to a safe place? Those are places where I don't think those things are always talked about in a lot of places. People, like you say, they want the sport aspect, they want the aesthetic aspect, but then there's some deep places where your mindset about reality is challenged. And so that's the things that I've been getting. It's like, wow, how to be able to turn it on and turn it off, because it's a whole energetic piece that's behind that will enable you to survive in that situation. And then when it's time to walk away, you walk away. So those are things that now is beginning to sink in me a little bit more about what does it mean to be a martial artist and to hold that responsibly. I'm not looking to fight anybody. I'm not looking to get into any scuffle. I don't want to. However, the mindset is that if I have to, I will, and I am prepared to do what it takes to survive. Period.
Yeah. And how long, because how long did it take you to see the correlations? Because there are certain types of dance, and we talked about this, that are lifted, that aren't very martial, but you do African dance and hula, and those are like rooted in Africa, Persia, Greece, Russia, like all these places that have those rooted folk dancey things. That in itself is a martial art. Like it is. Yeah. So how long was it until you kind of started seeing those correlations?
It was years. I mean, I didn't, like I said, I didn't really start seeing the correlation until the last 2.5, almost 3 years. And I've been doing martial arts for about 10 years now.
Yeah.
And I've been dancing for 40.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really have a container to put. I knew that, for example, it would be cool for dance and martial arts to somehow connect, but at the level that I'm learning it now, it's like, wow, even in having to root yourself into the ground and use the ground as a way to help you deliver a strike. There are all those principles that are in African dance and in hula. It's all about syncing. And so now that I teach those forms, I'm beginning to see, okay, this is where the syncing is important, to really sink and soften yourself into the ground and let the ground help facilitate the movement for you so that you're not using so much force, so much muscles. It's those pieces are now coming alive for me, and I'm able to bring that even into just teaching regular movement classes, how to change and become more in tune with your energetic state, because that it's almost like your fascia and your muscles, something that we were talking about in Qigong last night. It's like your fascia is that layer that's on top of your muscles and kind of tells your muscles what to do. It's kind of like that, I think, where when you're getting in contact with your energy, it's like you're able to guide it so that it can inform you how to move and how to be and how to exist. And so those are things that I'm starting to really now starting to hook into, which is actually kind of cool because it's changed my whole perspective about really understanding movement in its entirety.
Let's talk about what were some of your, because I think a lot of people want to hear this. When you were getting into martial arts from an older place, like what was the you may think but really that happened? Like you thought it was going to be this one way, but then because you stayed with it. And a lot of people are afraid of going into a martial arts community because they think it's going to be this way. But really it's this. Like, is there a thing that was there a you thought but really that happened when you started martial practice?
It was when I first started. I started in Judo.
Okay.
And so I started in that because, again, that's what my husband had practiced. So I figured, let me just try that. So I thought
that's a lot to start off with.
Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot. And I kind of figured out early that this is a little bit more that I can handle at that moment.
Yeah.
So my recollections of like seeing my dad, like I used to go with my dad to his dojo and he studied karate. And so I kind of thought it would be, more like that. And it was just, very formal. And it's not to say that Judo wasn't, but I didn't expect to be thrown around so much so early.
Yeah.
Expect that. And I was usually the only female. And sometimes the guys would just be a little rough and a little tough. And I didn't really know how to hold myself. And one guy, he threw me so hard, I almost cracked my sacrum. So it was just like, I didn't know what to do. We were always learning new katas, and the teacher wanted to test every quarter. It's like, this information is coming fast and furious, and I can't keep up. So I hung in there for almost a year. But then finally I had to say, you know what, I can't go further. I can't hold this information. Mm-hmm. And so then that's when I started, I looked into CLOT. Mm-hmm. And CLOT spoke to me because it seemed more like dance. Yeah. And it was repetitive, very, very repetitive. And so I'm like, okay, I think I can work with this because we're repeating the short movements and the exercises. The only thing that was intimidating was the gymnastics. But, you know, the rule was if you were over 35, and at that time I was in my early 40s. I was in my early 40s. So, you know, he was like, look, if you're over 35, you don't have to, but just be careful. And so I didn't want to seem like a wimp, but I also appreciated the fact that there was a nurturing space for us who was over 35, not to get hurt. But what I enjoyed about that was that everything was very repetitive and you repeated it, and that allowed it to sit in me a little bit more. So, the thing that I became hungry for was application. Mm-hmm. I was always thinking, okay, if I'm how is this going to work for me in the real world? That was the question I asked even in Judo. And I didn't get those answers because I didn't understand the applications of the throw. I didn't understand why, like, how's that going to work in a real scenario? Yeah. You know, so, I brought those same questions with me in CLOT, and I got some of those answers, you know, and I think different teachers had different approaches. I know Peter, he definitely had a more application approach, and so he would bring in other teachers like Rory Miller, who you probably know, Neil Badar, some other teachers who brought a host of different information around what's possible. I remember taking Roy Miller's class, and I really was excited about his approach, you know, 3-step, 2-step, 1-step, you know, and just being able to look at it in a real life scenario. So I'm thinking, okay, I think I'm beginning to sink my teeth a little bit more. But then, you know, that kind of stopped for me. It's like, okay, I ran into a wall with that too, because it's like, okay, there's something else that I'm supposed to glean from this. And I know that it's, again, more questions came up. And it's like, I know life is random. Life is not always planned. You're not going to always know what your opponent is going to do. Yeah. You know, so those are the things that started coming up for me. So I said more than what you probably asked.
No, you're killing it. I love this. Yeah. Because, you know, a lot of people, they'll come to me and they're like, well, I mean, you hear it from like a lot of fighters. They don't want to join a yoga class because they're just like, I don't want to be in a room full of girls trying to, you know, and then a lot of like people that are like really into yoga might be like, or dance, or be like, well, I want to join martial arts, but I don't really like violence, or, you know, all these things. And it's like, actually, yeah, it's like they're all, like, there's a you may think but really in all of these. Yeah. And
yeah, that was true for me. I thought, like, for Judo, it wouldn't be so hard, but it was.
Yeah.
It was, and it was more that I could handle. With White Crane, I was wanting more application, and I got it in pieces. And it's not to say there's nothing wrong with the system. I just think each teacher, each place can share what's available to them to share. And so I just said, let me just take that and use it and take and glean as much as I can. Right. Then when I need to go on, which is what I did, now I'm here and learning Shaolin, and now the pieces are coming together. And I think the thing that I really love about what I'm learning is that very thing about Kung Fu is not what I thought. It's not always about application. It's not always about trying to, like, fight. You know, it's not always about that. Right. A lot of it is about yourself. Yeah. You. Yeah. You know, and dealing with you. So that's the piece that really started to get me. It's like, and that was really the wild moment. Like, wow, okay, so it's not always about wanting to just be ready to fight or defend or protect yourself or someone else. It's really getting into your headspace.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you understand who you are, or once you are on the journey of trying to deal with yourself, then it's like, I think it gets a little bit easier to know your own limitations and know where you need to go, and to be able to view it like the situation is this is the situation, this is what I need to do in order to survive in this situation in this moment.
I'm teaching a kind of a thing around judo right now to a person that also is older.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I my first martial art was judo,
Mm-hmm.
and I personally feel it's the missing piece to everyone's martial art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And but there's a way that we teach it. It's funny because people are like, I want to learn judo, and I'm like, how old are you? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, no,
Yeah.
you don't. Like, are you 7? You're gonna love judo, you know. But
Yeah.
it's like, if you're not, like, I felt my dad was just like, the first thing every human being needs to learn. There's one martial art move that everyone on earth needs to know, and that's how to fall. It's the
Yeah.
one. That's the only move you're guaranteed to have to learn, like, or you're guaranteed to use. Right? You're guaranteed. You could live your whole life like you're a wonderful person, and you got your ears and your eyes on, and you shine this light. That can almost give you that minimizes your chances of being in a physical confrontation, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't minimize your ability to where you made too many herbal tinctures one night and you're like, oh my God, I love this peaches gin thing that I made. And then you're just going to eat the dirt
Right.
one night. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And so
That's true.
none of us are exempt from gravity, but we can always communicate our way or run or whatever. So that being said,
Right. No, that's true. I mean, that's what I did. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things they did teach us well, was how to fall.
fall. Yeah.
And so it is similarly in Silat the same. And so that's what I did like about both of those, was that we got on the ground a lot earlier.
Yeah.
And so I think that it took me a while to get past my fear of falling, but that was the place where I got comfortable being on the ground, falling and rolling. And so we did it so often that it was just, it's no thing. And so now it comes embedded in your muscle memory, and so that was definitely helpful in just knowing how to fall and how to go into the ground and go upside down, and all the stuff we see in modern dance, release technique, we see all that stuff, but it's like it's already.
Yeah, I was gonna say the highest level of falling, like, first you learn judo and all that other stuff, and you learn to get slammed and all that stuff, but the best fallers, modern dance.
Yeah.
You can just you'll see them just flop on like a hollow wooden stage, and you won't hear a sound.
Yeah.
It's
that's
crazy.
True.
And
that's true.
And what I was talking about this yesterday to a guy who was into combat sports. But I told him, I was like, when you combat sports, you're on pads, so the ground is soft, so you can have a hard body. But the harder the ground, the softer your body needs to be.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a good litmus to let people understand the essence of studying something like modern dance and things like that require like a flow around, but you're not wearing you're not wearing knee pads. You're not on a pad at all. You're just wherever. Like, you literally might be in a basketball court one day and a stage the next day. So I think that's really good practice for people.
Yeah, it was. I mean, even when I was really heavy into like contemporary or postmodern modern dance, whole inverted work. As a matter of fact, the dance community just lost a very well-known modern dancer recently. And I remember taking her class years ago, and she was definitely ahead of her time, and a lot of beautiful floor stuff that I just fell in love with then. But then, years passed and didn't do it, and then it got reacquainted through Silat. So yeah, and again, in Silat, there's no pads. You're on the ground. As a matter of fact, we would roll on the concrete, to get us used to that. And I think that was a really big asset, because that's most likely where you're going to fall.
It's probably where you're going to fall. Yeah, there was something about these jujitsu guys asked, they're like, yeah, how would you adapt jujitsu to the street? And I'm like, I don't know, put on the clothes you just came in and let's walk out into the parking lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, what are you wearing? Because if you had to use jujitsu and you train jujitsu, or you have to use karate and you train karate or taekwondo or whatever, like when I was a kid, man, before I would buy pants, I'd try to whip some kicks out.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, and I had this stack of, I think it was like 11 pairs of pants in 2 weeks with no crotch. I was like,
that's what you get down to. You're not going to be in a gi or come to a grip.
Yeah. And so what did I do? So thanks to home economics class, right?
And I teach.
It's 6 years of home economics.
I loved it.
Oh, it's the best. So I sewed. I mean, I had my own pattern of my own pants that I had a person make until Lululemon showed up and finally started making some pants. But I don't like their stuff. But there's a couple other companies now that finally gusset their pants.
Yeah.
Right. But when I was a kid, I sewed gusset. I would go to the the thrift store, because back then it was like thrift wasn't vintage, so thrift meant $2 as opposed to 35,
I know.
Buy some pants and then sew a gusset into your other pants with like a cool fabric or something, and and then baby boys.
Not teaching. I know, not teaching that.
I know. Okay, so in your dance, all right, I'm actually gonna put up. So I admit, like when I did that little video about me doing your African dance class. Like I was literally just starting to do it just because I'm getting more into that style because I'm roller skating a lot. I've been roller skating. I'm coming up on 2 years of roller skating now. And I'm really into like the hip hop style, like the kind of JB skating and the old school stuff.
Yeah, old school stuff.
The middle game, right? They call it the middle game. But that's all about the bounce. Right. And so then I was like, I'm gonna do this class, and it was just you and me alone. But I started doing it, and I was like, so that's why I had to make that video, because it was telling the story. Because I don't like dance classes. I've taken so many dance classes, and I just do them because I know they're good for me. But yours made me feel so good.
Awesome.
I loved it so much. I still actually go through so much of that sequence all the time.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. That's the idea. I mean, that's what I want to bring to my practice. Is I really want I want to enjoy it too. I mean, I want to enjoy it with you. So if I'm not enjoying it, I don't know if you're going to be enjoying it either,
Yeah.
But I think that, and I understand why some people, I think for a lot of people, going to a dance class can be intimidating. And I think, media and Hollywood and television kind of gives dance classes this kind of image, oh my God, you're going to get made fun of. Your teacher's going to be hard on you. You got to be able to get the routine in like 2.5 seconds, that kind of thing, And so, unfortunately, some places embody that, And so that's people. It's like, I don't want to be persecuted or penalized if I don't get it as fast, or because if I feel like I can't feel good. I'm going to be struggling with my self-image and my body size. And so those are the things that, unfortunately, some people contend with as well. But for me, I don't want that, because I know how I felt, and I know what I had to go through and what things I had to try to do to deflect and to try to. And it's hard. Not everybody wants to even put up with that kind of fight. So it's like, why not make it fun? Why not make it a hospitable environment for people to want to learn and have a good time and to be inspired? And it's okay. Everybody, we're all getting it together, and so that then you can retain it. And like you want to learn it. You want to keep, you have this appetite to want to keep going back to it, instead of like, oh my God, I never want to take that class again. Oh my God, I felt so crappy. I don't want any of my students to ever feel that. So
what are you teaching right now?
Right now, teaching a couple of classes. I'm teaching we're over at the school. I teach Pan-African dance on Saturdays.
Is that what I did?
Yeah, Pan-African dance.
And this a little bit about course. That term.
Pan-African dance is an old term. Goes all the way back to the days of Marcus Garvey. He actually coined the term Pan-African dance. And basically, it's just a term that highlights the experiences of people who are descended from the African continent. So people where the African descendants have scattered all over the world by way of the transatlantic slave trade.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, by way of the church. So even Africa itself as a continent is Pan-African because you have all these different
Everything.
cultures on the continent. But from his perspective, he specifically is talking about African descendants by way who traveled and landed in other parts of the world by way of the transatlantic slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
And so that he wanted to have a term that unified those people and those experiences. And so for my class, it's similar. It's like, okay, there are dances here in America, there are dances in the Caribbean, that all shows a thread to the continent. And
Yeah.
so while my class is not a traditional African class in that you have your drums, you have your rhythms, you have your song, you have your drum orchestra. That's a lot of elements. You know, a lot of people don't realize, you know, when they say, I want to be something really traditional and authentic, or do you really know what you're asking? And most people do not.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, I just want to give people just a touch, enough for people to see the relationship between hip hop, for example, and African dance, or salsa, an African dance, or, you know, Caribbean dance, or Afro-Haitian, you know, or jazz dance, or American or African-American social dance traditions, so that people can see that there is this thread that links it to the continent. And so I teach really basic concepts, basic foot movement, basic foot patterns, basic body isolations and isometrics that you'll see in a lot of these different dance traditions, so that if you were to say, you know, I really want to get into Congolese, you'll have something to come in with. And you're learning in a very safe environment where you're not going to be, you know, made fun of, or you're not going to be in a class full of 40, 30 people, and no one's going to really pay attention to you because they're going really fast and you're going to get swallowed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, those are things that I had to endure. But being a dancer, it was a lot easier for me. But for a lot of people, it's still very intimidating because they don't get the attention and the focus that they need to help them learn and to absorb the movement. So then they come to me, and I'm glad to be able to share that. So I teach Pan-African, and I also teach in a brand new class called Kahula. Now, Kahula is, you won't necessarily hear the term Kahula. You'll hear mostly hula. But I came up with that term because it denotes beginning or start. You know,
Okay.
Beginning or start. And so it's another class where we teach basic footwork, and that's codified to the tradition. So basic footwork, basic terminology in Hawaiian, and then also basic body positions, arm positions, just really foundational movement that helps to introduce people to Hawaiian culture, to Hawaiian movement. And, you know, most traditional Hawaiian dance, like I learned it, you learn in the hala or hula school. And so that's a culture in of itself that a lot of folks, especially here in the mainland, it's not always easily accessed. And when you step into that realm, it's a way of existing and functioning that if you're not from there, if you're not from the islands, it can be tough to acclimate yourself to. And not all the kumuhulas teach it in that way. They're trying to stay very traditional to how they would do it back in Hawaii, but then you're here in the mainland, and so how do you meet people where you are? You know, and so this class is for those individuals who are curious, you know, who want to know, but then again want to know in a very a much safer space. I hate to use that term safe because I think halal can be safe too, but I just think that they want to really be in a space where they can be free to make mistakes and not be penalized. So that's what I mean by safe. And so we go slow. And then also the wellness piece aspect is what I bring to the class as well, that we're using synovial joint warm-ups and mobility movement exercises to help prime the body, you know, for movement. And so that you can, you know, get into your body and embody the basic hula steps too. It's not just, okay, basic hula, kaholo, ka'o, wehe, that type stuff, but just how do you really get into your body to absorb so that you can move well and be safe and not injure yourself.
Yeah, this is, I love talking to people, especially older people. I always say you want to learn from people that got something to do tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. I love that. You got something to do tomorrow. Yes.
Yeah. It's like I teach and I train like I got shit to do.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah.
I love
And
it.
a
I
lot of
love
that movement that you're doing is real. I mean, it doesn't make you pumped. It centers you. And this is what I think people forget about in the go hard mentality that we're getting in like social media and stuff, where it's kind of a little blowhardy.
Mm-hmm.
They forget, like, when you go hard, it's like, "Ah," and then
Mm-hmm.
you come down. But like, there's another thing when you connect, because like you just
Mm-hmm.
feel kind of energy vibrating. You vibrate and you're clear and your vision's different and you're like, oh, I'm connected. I'm breathing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You're not swole. You're like
Yeah.
connected. And oh man,
Connect.
it's good. Yeah.
That's my approach. That's my approach. And it's funny that you said how you were saying how people want to get pumped up. That's the culture today. And so people
Hmm.
like us who really, that we're becoming an anomaly. It's kind of interesting. We're
Hmm.
becoming the minority
Yeah.
because the fad is you want to get a swole and you want it now.
Yeah.
You want to, but then it's like that's you're gonna tap out sooner.
There's,
You're not,
I tell
yeah,
people all the time, if you keep bending a paper clip, it breaks.
yeah,
And and we and when I say train like you got something to do tomorrow, it also goes back to a lot of these traditions where you're practicing in a way that you got to chop wood, carry water, you have to care for people, and also it's pre knee surgery.
free.
So if you're trained, it's like we're able to achieve really high levels of practice now because you're allowed to get your knee replaced at 19 and then do it again and then get your shoulder replaced. But like you have to realize training that way, if you have to get your knee replaced by 25, really think about the fact that practice, you're dead man walking now.
Yeah,
And just know that, like, so that practice, yeah, thank you to technology. Technology lets us do this, but we
yeah,
want to think about how do we adapt what we're
mm-hmm,
doing. Like, okay, what are the principles of that? But now, how do they connect back to the
mm-hmm.
principles of the old way of, like, I got stuff to do.
Right.
I don't.
And I'm glad you said that because that's, when I say, particularly for both Pan African dance and Kahula, that these are the wellness piece is not a new piece, even in those
Right.
traditions. It's
Yeah.
not new.
Yeah.
But I think that as those dance forms become mainstream and
Hmm.
become more athleticized,
Yeah.
it is more about the athleticism and then the essence of the
Yeah.
wellness piece. Like, you have to live and this is a longevity practice.
Yeah.
So that gets lost. And so I'm only really doing what was done a long time ago. So I
Hmm.
can't say this is something new.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
just I'm I'm going back to, and so with both of those classes, really honing in on the mobility piece, the mobility exercises. Like, look, in the morning or tomorrow, you still got stuff to do. You're not going to be doing this movement all the time. And so you have to
Hmm.
look at it
Hmm.
from a longer um, a longer perspective, that it's not just what you're doing in the class, but it's after and how do you function after those things. I don't know if you're familiar with Mary Monarch. They're the premier hula festival for the last
Okay.
50 years. And so they didn't do it, of course, in light of the COVID thing this year, but in watching that particular venue and seeing how hula is, that's like the Olympics of hula, and so you see where some, groups, they do these back bends and they do these deep knee walks. And, the dancers are entering to the competition at 13 now.
Yeah.
They're really young, but then what I'm seeing is that their life is short. They
Yeah.
burn out by the time they're 25
Hmm.
because they burned out their knees. And it's not, the awareness is not taught. It's just, this extreme training that has a short life. And so I see those things and it's like, oh wow, I think we need to go back.
Yeah. Oh, well, when I talk to people a lot, like I always say there's traditional art, but
Hmm.
then there's the tradition of art.
Hmm.
And when I love learning traditional arts, but I'm a traditional artist, meaning I take those principles and that essence, but you still
Hmm.
want to communicate in your world today with the tools that you
Hmm.
have, right?
Tools that
Um,
you have. That's right.
yeah, like I don't do medieval times, right? Like I'm not,
That, yeah.
yeah. But with dance and with all these things, it's kind of like you're doing it with the tools you have, but the tradition of dance was community, was was that celebration, and it was it was a training in there, and it was the ability to feel something, like you're feeling. And if you can't dance, you play the instruments. If you can't play,
That's right.
But now maybe like you can't dance, you can't play an instrument, but you got rad playlist. So you bring that, you know what I mean? You go with that, right? So there's something beyond that. And I just genuinely ask people sometimes to like start seeking the essence of why that art existed. Art was communication. Your culture today now, right? But when your art becomes commerce, it becomes commerce. So now I can eat up this resource, these children, these athletes, in order to build my business, which creates my commerce, right? So now my students, oftentimes it's collegiate sports. Do I really care about them after college, right? Do I care about them after we go off and win this competition? And and that's slavery, right? I'm using these athletes to do this thing. Oftentimes they're not even being paid; they're paying me, right? So I really feel that as facilitators, like you are a rare breed, but you're really important. Like, look at people and be like, hey, I love that you want to get all swole. You got shit to do tomorrow.
That's shit to do tomorrow.
Yeah. I've had so many people leave my classes because I've been like, don't train like that.
Yeah.
Stop trying, dude. And they're like, I want to go. And then they go away. And the next thing you know, they're coming back a year later, like, I blew my knees out. Can you help me with some rehab? And you're like, look, I'm going to make my money off you either way, my man.
Just leave it in.
Yeah, you can either pay me like, $200 a month, or you can hit $200 an hour on the table that I'm sitting on right now.
Right. Pick one.
Yeah. Pick it. I want $200 from you.
Right. I love the movie Equalizer, the second one, where Robert McCall says there's two types of pain.
Oh.
Pain that hurts and the pain that alters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you get to pick.
Yeah, you get to pick.
You get to pick.
Yeah. I
love that line.
So, okay, so 2 more things. I don't want to take up too much of your time. If you were to give anyone some advice, like, people that have something to do tomorrow, we already talked about go slow, find a good community, and all these other things. But, like, I mean, I need to take your Pan-African dance. I wouldn't take your hula class because I don't want to exude that much sexuality later in life.
People think that. Oh, you're so crazy.
I'm just kidding. I don't need that level of power. I get it. If you were to give people, some advice when like starting a movement practice, like maybe because you've done it all and you've committed to it all and you've actually connected them all. Like, is there any advice you would give to someone? Because there's a lot of people right now looking for a personal practice. We're just sitting at home.
Yeah. Well, gosh, the things, it's funny because, when I had my dance training program that I ran for a couple of years over the Malanga, one of the things that I included was a type of wellness movement practice to get connected to your physical anatomy, to get connected to just your overall structure, how you hold yourself.
Yeah.
So those things, into that detail, is not necessarily taught in a lot of classes, even traditional. They're not teaching it for that mind space. So for me, just you understanding your body. And so I don't know, I guess if you had, there were more deep roots in spiritual studies and more Master Sheldons, then definitely a teaching like that where you are getting connected to all 3 pieces, your mind state, your spiritual state, and your healing state, to understand that. So I guess in lieu of that, then maybe starting with things like Qigong, starting with things with like yoga, just to help you, first of all, introduce yourself to your own body. And then if you're going to do a movement practice, maybe something like a contact improvisation or a more of a almost, I want to say not ecstatic dance, but a class where you can really explore different movement patterns without necessarily conforming to a style.
Yeah.
Really understanding how to be function. So those dance forms that don't lend itself to a style. I think is really good for people starting out, just to explore their bodies in different ways. And then once you get comfortable there, then you can decide, okay, maybe I want to take more hip hop, because you can bring that information with you about how to hold yourself, how to recognize, for example, if you've gone too far, if you're doing more than what your body can handle. You have to teach yourself how to recognize yourself. That makes any kind of sense. You have to teach yourself, how to feel and know where you are in your body enough to keep yourself safe in any practice. But once you do that, then you're able to navigate and know where you want to be. And let's say if you want to go deeper in tradition, then you can even take that information with you. And okay, the teacher, they may be asking me to do things that I'm not ready to do, but I can do this right now. So maybe I need to hang out here. So you can make those decisions for yourself without being disrespectful, of course, but just being able to make conscious choices while you're in that space, so that when you come away and you practice on your own, you're able to deconstruct it in a way that's appropriate for your body and where you are. Certainly, you can always come and seek me out, because those are things that I introduce in my class, whether it's Pan-African or Kahula. I definitely want the student to be educated in their body, and so that's one of the hallmarks of my teaching. And so definitely you can come to my class, or you can come and take any of the Qigong classes over through the Shaolin Life at Deep Root program, to really get connected to yourself and your body, so that you can navigate in whatever movement practice you choose.
How about, okay, I have, and I always like to bring music into this.
Of course.
Are there any, I've been getting really into, I used to have a thing where, like, in record stores, I have a rule. Mm-hmm. If you're going through the old records, you always go to the African place, and there was always like the rock albums made in the 60s in like Nigeria, and it's always like this crazy band, but they all have like gun belts on and AK-47s, and it's the best music though. I mean, like shredding players, but like African, but rock and roll, but psychedelic and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. But if there are there any artists that you just really, really, really like when they come on, or like they really mean a lot to you? Like what are some of your favorite artists? It doesn't even have to be to dance to, but just like, what's some of your favorite music?
Gosh, well, I definitely am an old school buff. Mm-hmm. So I grew up with the old school stuff, or EWF, Earth, Wind and Fire, Freddie Hubbard, of course, mm-hmm. Coltrane, and the music of the early 80s, late 70s, Tina Marie. People know who Tina Marie mm-hmm. is. Rick James and the Stone City Band, Slave, Howard Johnson, Miles J, all those mm-hmm. cats that just came from an era of Kashif, and those. I mean, the list goes on and on. Of course, Michael Jackson. You can't leave another thing. But even pre Michael Jackson, Shaka Khan. Those cats. Who, at least for me, when I hear their music, I definitely can feel the African influence deep. I mean, it's deep. It's not like you're going to hear in sukus, for example, which is a very widespread form of music, which is, it's funny. Speaking of sukus, it's like when you hear Afro beats now, like Ala Day and stuff like that, they're all biting from sukus, which
Spell
is old. Sukus is Soukus.
Yeah.
Sukus.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sukus. And so sukus is a contemporary Congolese music form mm-hmm. that's very widespread. And so a lot of Afro beats, they borrow from that, and even so places like Nigeria and Ghana, Eastern Africa, they're really into those things, but it's old, right? But mm-hmm. then when you look at music like that comes out of the United States and comes out of the African American musical traditions, when you're really listening to some of that bass line and those drum lines and things like Max Roach, you really can feel that deep underneath, and so that's what I look to, to be able to help people recognize that it's already around us. So I definitely look more to the old stuff. The new stuff, unfortunately, like when you get into like the early 2000s, that's when I kind of checked out, because the musicianship wasn't there, and the knowledge. I mean, I like people like Jill Scott, I really kind of got into her because, again, she was going back. Bruno Mars, he's actually another cat that I do like, but again, he's doing the old stuff. Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, Morris Day and the Time. He's going back and bringing that stuff back.
Yeah.
But what I like about that cat is that he gives credit to where credit is due. I know Stevie Wonder, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, and even Quincy Jones gave him a huge big up for just being like, hey, this young brother is acknowledging us in ways that some of our own ain't, and so that was really cool, but a lot of the artists I'm hearing today, I'm not connected, not because they're not talented, it's because I know my ears are really accustomed to those rich sounds of the 70s. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, and so that music is just filled with so much memory and a time that I long for even now, and I'm grateful for the present, but I guess what I really appreciated was just the level of excellence in the music. You had to sing, you had to play. There was no faking that. And the whole album had to be good, not just the single. The whole track had to be on point.
Okay, so I can. It's funny because in this time, I'm with you. There's not a lot of people that really turn me on right now, but when they do, when I find them, they blow my mind.
Yeah.
And so in the old soul kind of world, like the 3 albums I think over the past 10 years that have really nailed it. Aloe Black's first album. You know that I need a dollar. Have you heard that? Yeah, that song. Okay, that whole album killed it. And then Alabama Shakes came out.
Oh, okay.
And Alabama Shakes, their second album, masterpiece, front to back.
Right.
I'll send it to you. Have you heard it?
I don't think I have, but send it to me.
Yeah, Brittany is a songwriting genius. Just a young girl, grew up in a junkyard, and just shreds. Just breaks your heart. And then Michael Kiwanuka showed up.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard Michael Kiwanuka?
No, I'm new.
Masterpiece. His album was in my I just put his album on, and I think I didn't turn it off. Actually, but all 3 of those artists, when their albums came out, put them on, and they probably didn't turn off for about a month.
Are they new? Are they new artists?
Yeah, newer artists. Yeah.
I never heard it.
So and I love turning people on to. I mean, they're in the 10 years now. So, but Aloe Black kind of started people. He was sort of one of the guys that just sort of got people going, oh yeah, we need to go a little bit more old school.
Yeah.
Right? Just like there was a country singer named Sturgill Simpson who kind of went on tour. Willie Nelson heard him, took him on tour, and then the next, one year he's opening for Willie at the Fillmore, and next year he's headlining 2 nights at the Fillmore, right? So he was just, but legit old school country, kind of weird psychedelic player. But he made all the modern pop guys be like, oh shoot, I kind of wish we would have done that because we got to stand here all glittery all the time, singing about stupid stuff, and now this guy can be as real as he wants.
Right.
So, it's that undeniably good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and every now and then when they come out, you're like, oh, that's undeniably good.
Yeah. No, and I think they're that because there are artists like that, young people who are going back because they recognize the excellence and what it requires of them. So for them to commit to that speaks volumes of their own maturity state and how they see the world around them, that, look, we want to be as good as these guys were. So we need to get on our game. We need to be able to play and to sing and commit the way that they did, so it's very honoring to hear young artists do that. And those guys are even rare today. And so I definitely want to hear these groups you mentioned. That would be cool.
I'll send you some stuff. Well, that was the big 3.
That was the big 3. Awesome. This was fun.
You killed it.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate you so much, all that you're doing to just keep conversation going, and to talk and to do this, and don't let, the fact that we're on a screen. So what? We're still having conversation. We're still connecting. And I think that's what is so needed right now in this time.
Yeah, and we're always connected. I mean, I'm dear friends with Pete and me and Sheldon. I mean, I mean, he's basically a partner here, you know, in all of this stuff. You know, I mean, he's a part of this community, and so are you. So it's kind of like, and I can't mention your name to anyone that knows you that isn't just like the biggest fan in the world. So like we all just love you dearly. Yeah, super super big fans.
Everything. I'm looking forward to coming to work. And I mean, do you think you guys will be opening your school soon again?
I won't be. I mean, I'm just kind of doing this. I'm adapting to a couple things.
Okay.
And you know, I won't say that I mean, I'm just doing a little bit more of the private stuff.
That's all good.
And we'll see. I mean, I haven't been teaching at all. I mean,
Really?
I have a couple clients that I teach, but I'm very, very, very niche right now. You know, I have
Yeah.
kind of the celebrity kind of thing, and you know, stuff like that. So it's like certain people can come in,
Yeah.
but I'm also branching out into other things. So
Awesome.
I just, yeah, it's like I'm a little nervous. I just got offered a cool thing in India, but India has
Wow.
now broken out into a 250 million person uprising. So I'm probably not
Wow.
going to go there right
Yeah,
now.
not right now.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
just later.
That's
Let me
right. Do you
know.
have a website or anything?
Right now I do. I have my own www.ixalt.org, but I have to update it. But you can still go on and check it out. But you can definitely catch me over at the deeproot.org/move, and
Okay.
so that's where you can get a lot of my information about my classes. And then also for my herbal page is I'm on Facebook at Exalted Natural Body Care and Botanicals, and I'm also on Instagram under Exalted Natural Body. I'm also on I'm also on Instagram under Exalt, IXALT as well. So you can catch me on social media. You can catch me at the Deeproot website.org/move. And you can go to my personal website, IXALT.org as well.
That was Shereel. Again, if you want to support this place and this site, totalbswellness.com, take some classes. I'm offering 2 weeks for you with the premium, or just go on freemium. I love premium, it makes me laugh every time. But there is a lot of work on there and great talks and lessons. I'm putting up some free classes for you guys. And in the premium site, I'm about to release a lot of really cool stuff. So, working hard over here. It's totalbswellness.com. If you're not showing up and practicing, it's all BS. Straight up. Show up.